Imagine a little girl interrupting a stern judge in the middle of a hearing, not with an apology, but with an absurd request. What happened next shocked everyone and changed their lives forever. Are you ready to discover a story that will make you believe in justice once again?
Silence in the court!
There was an evident sense of anxiety in the courtroom as Nia approached the judge. A cold and formal room, a judge known for his strictness, and a single mother with fear in her eyes. No one expected that a small gesture from a child could change everything. The judge, seated behind the massive oak desk, wore a serious expression on his face. Judge Caliesto was his name. He was known for enforcing the law, regardless of who was in trouble. A single mother named Nia was in court because she had difficulty paying $200 in parking fees. Standing tense before the judge, she tried to defend her refusal to pay the hefty parking fine. The whispers from the audience were distracting the judge as they tried to guess the outcome. He struck his gavel and said, "Order in the court." A high-pitched voice broke the court's silence with a request for a hamburger. But what would you have done in the judge's place? Would you have ignored the child? Or would you have tried to understand what lay behind that simple request? How important is a judge's humanity? Next to Nia, the small voice was speaking. That was Maya, Nia's 6-year-old daughter. Everyone in the courtroom, including Nia, was left speechless. Normally, Maya's simple comment would have made everyone laugh. However, Judge Callisto's formality was well known. This was an extraordinary and unacceptable display of immaturity. Shame made Nia blush. Had her 6-year-old child simply ruined their chances of getting out of this predicament? Nia looked at Maya with concern, but the little girl was simply standing behind her mother, her innocent eyes wide open. What happens in the next few minutes defies every courtroom rule and forever changes everyone's perception of Judge Callisto. But unlike the others, Judge Callisto seemed indifferent. He raised his eyebrows in surprise, yet there was no anger on his face. Quickly bowing to Maya, Nia whispered that they were not allowed to interrupt the judge. Maya was now worried that her youthful outburst would infuriate the judge further, even though they thought her presence would calm him. She felt a bit embarrassed, especially after realizing that Maya's outburst likely made them seem reckless. Judge Callisto glanced at the little intruder, who was fidgeting next to her mother. "Miss, did you say hamburger?" This is the moment when everything changes. Before continuing, leave a comment. Do you think the judge will be stern or show compassion? And if this story is already touching you, leave a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss other extraordinary stories like this one. The judge asked Maya in a surprisingly gentle tone. His inquiry was different from the caustic observations he usually made in court. Everyone was watching Maya, curious to see how she would respond and what the judge would do next. Hoping they wouldn't regret it, Nia held her breath. But Maya refused to answer the judge's question. Nia cast a worried look at Maya, who appeared oblivious to the tension she had caused. Isn't that how we often feel when facing life's difficulties? Like Nia, we try to keep everything under control, but it only takes a small, unforeseen event to make us feel inadequate. But is it really right to judge someone for a single mistake? The girl's big brown eyes seemed focused on a painting of a serious-looking man with a wig hanging on the wall rather than on the judge. Nia's heart rate was at 200%. It wasn't going well. However, Judge Callisto did not shut down as Nia had expected. He simply looked at Nia instead of Maya. Silence continued for several moments, making Nia feel like an insect under a microscope. When he finally began to speak, Judge Callisto asked Maya if she had something she wanted to share with him. Before Nia could respond, however, Maya stepped forward and approached the judge's bench. "Yes, sir," she replied, nodding. She told the judge that she could hear her stomach growling. She and her mother hadn't had breakfast yet, and the amount of chatter was making her hungry. Nia's embarrassment grew. Facing a stern judge, she was trying to explain a crucial matter while her daughter was asking for food.
Order in the court!
She knew they should have stopped to eat something before going to court. But that morning's rush had been something else. Making excuses for work and Maya's school while enduring rush hour traffic included getting Nia ready and making sure she had everything she needed, even if her daughter's outburst seemed pleasant and even charming. The judge might now see it as even worse. The judge gestured with his hand, interrupting Nia just as she was about to apologize. He warned Maya that court could be a long and boring place, especially when she was hungry. "How about coming here and explaining these hamburgers to me?" he continued. The judge's question surprised everyone, and even Judge Callisto seemed a bit uncertain after asking about the hamburgers. Nia, uncertain about what to expect, could only nod as Maya turned to her mother for permission. Maya happily ran to the imposing judge's desk. She approached the small platform in front of the magistrate's chair and smiled. Judge Callisto leaned back in his chair and watched her approach, appearing shocked. Normally, things didn't go this way in his court. It seemed everyone in the courtroom was holding their breath, waiting to see what Judge Callisto would do. Was he still angry about being interrupted? Would he discipline Maya for challenging the judge? No one could have predicted the judge's surprising reaction, not even Nia. Nia was a single mother to her lively 6-year-old daughter, Maya, and her life was an endless struggle to balance work, childcare, and financial support. Every morning was an exercise in finding balance among these demands, unless Maya woke up coughing and with a runny nose, which was a serious sign that a cold was coming. Nia had to get to her shift at the bakery on time, but she also needed to pick up Maya's prescription before going to work. As soon as Nia could, she started getting ready. She made sure Maya had her favorite stuffed animal for comfort, dressed her in warm clothes, and prepared a small bag with tissues and candies. She rushed Maya out the door, hoping traffic wouldn't be too heavy, but unfortunately, her wishes didn't come true. It seemed rather difficult to make the usual short trip to the pharmacy because all the traffic lights seemed to be red. When Nia arrived at the store, she was already late. As soon as Nia's car entered the pharmacy parking lot, anxiety was in the air. Unfortunately, all the parking spots were reserved. She saw an accessible space near the door, but it was empty. Time was of the essence, but Nia knew well that she shouldn't park there. She quickly did some calculations while glancing at the empty store. Maya was coughing in the back seat, so Nia made a bad decision. She made sure it would only take a few minutes, thinking there wouldn't be any cars waiting for her and that she would be in and out quickly. She parked in the disabled spot. However, things never go well for single moms. The line at the pharmacy was moving slowly, taking a long time to sort out each person's prescription in front of Nia, even as 5 minutes turned to 10 and then 15.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel. It's completely free and takes just a second, but it means the world to us. Your support is the reason we can keep bringing you incredible stories every day.
Nia got the medicine and practically ran back to her car. She began to worry as she approached her vehicle, feeling guilty for risking the parking spot. Had she been gone too long? Her fears were confirmed when she noticed the bright orange envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. There was a $200 fine for illegal parking. The number hit Nia like a punch in the stomach. $200 was a tough blow for Nia, whose budget was already tight. It was more than half of what she spent each week on groceries. How would she pay for it? Nia rationed and calculated in the days that followed. She made up the lost time everywhere, even with her daily coffee and gas for the car. However, in the end, the $200 budget constraint was still excessive. Nia had to face the reality of the situation. There was no way she could pay such a fine. She had to make a tough decision. Either she would show up in court and present her case, or pay the fine and skip her monthly rent payments. The thought of going to court made Nia want to pull back due to the intimidating judges and complicated procedures. But for her, the $200 fine was simply too much. For this reason, Nia decided to risk her life in court. Perhaps, just perhaps, the judge would be understanding and show her a bit of mercy if she told him everything. Nia spent several days practicing her justification and researching parking laws before the court hearing. As the day approached, she felt anxious. Would the magistrate consider her arguments? Would she be able to convince him to overlook the ticket? As she entered the grand court, with its tall ceilings and stern security guards, her confidence faded almost entirely. The sternness of the presiding judge, of whom Nia had heard, increased her anxiety, and the atmosphere in the courtroom felt solemn and bleak. She trembled terribly when she finally found herself before Judge Callisto. Much of what Nia said was met with indifference. Her voice trembled slightly as she recounted the incident. She described her frantic schedule as a single mother, the dreadful parking situation that led to the fine, and the need to rush to pick up Nia's prescription before heading to work. To demonstrate to the judge the serious conditions that led to her mistake, Nia was practicing her justification in advance. She tried to persuade the court of her sincerity with a polite and well-articulated speech. However, Judge Callisto seemed impassive. He was a man of few words and a stern face. He listened to Nia's explanation with a detached expression, but it was hard to tell what was going through his mind. The reputation of Judge Callisto Rizzo as a rigid judge, along with his inflexibility, annoyed Nia. Without considering the situation or the reason, he strictly adhered to the norm. He always imposed the harshest penalties and the most severe punishments when he was certain that the crime or infraction in question had been committed. The context and motivation behind the offense had nothing to do with his job. As the seconds passed, Nia's heart sank as she watched the judge review the case file. Despite her well-prepared defense, the judge did not seem convinced. He directed targeted questions to her, focusing solely on the parking violation and not the reasons behind it. Due to the hardness of his stone, Nia thought that not only would she pay the fine, but he would also increase it as retribution for wasting the court's time. However, she was not aware of how her daughter's actions would change everything. Just when Nia was about to give up, the judge had a sudden outburst. Then Maya, who had been silent the whole time, broke the silence and asked for hamburgers. Although Nia had not instructed Maya on any court procedures before their arrival, she was unprepared for such a sudden observation. Nia apologized and explained that they hadn't had breakfast due to the morning rush. She thought it was just one more bad choice and feared the judge would think she was an irresponsible mother as well as a reckless driver. At that point, Maya and Judge Callisto were sitting side by side in front of the curious court. Everyone, including Nia, felt pity for the little child, who was clearly just trying to grab some food and get out of this depressing situation. The judge leaned forward and said in a very low voice, speaking directly to Maya. Although he was aware that the young girl had had a tough morning, he told her He just needed to ask her a few questions. What was Nia's job? Was his initial question. Maya felt encouraged by the judge's kind tone and responded immediately. Her mother worked long hours at the bakery, creating delicious cakes and pastries. Sometimes, she also worked night shifts as a waitress at a nearby restaurant. The judge simply nodded. When his curiosity piqued, he began to ask more delicate questions. He learned more about Nia's life as a single mother juggling multiple jobs. When Nia first realized how challenging her mother's circumstances were, she was 6 years old. She explained that to make ends meet, Nia often had to work long hours, leaving her little free time. The courtroom fell silent as they listened to Nia's story through her daughter. Her true identity as a single mother struggling to support her family was now known by many who previously viewed her solely as a parking violation. The question is, how often do we judge people solely by their actions, without ever considering the circumstances behind them? Is it right to apply the law without empathy? Leave your thoughts in the comments. It was disheartening even when Nia revealed the terrible series of events that had led her to her situation. Nia's heart broke at Maya's remarks. Maya's candor had a way of revealing things, even though she hadn't intended to share such personal information. As she recalled her past pain, an overwhelming wave of sadness washed over her. In reality, being a single mother meant so much more to her than simply juggling her job as a baker. It also included an endless battle against the initial betrayal that had put her in this predicament. At the age of 3, Nia began dating her 4-year-old boyfriend, Darius. Darius had promised Nia that he was free of drugs after being released from prison for a minor possession charge. Dedicate once again all his attention to his young family. Nia had been blinded by love and hope, and he had restored her trust. At that time, Nia was working hard to save for her own college education. It was supposed to be a new beginning for each of them. In her ideal future, Nia and Darius would raise their daughter, Maya, together while she grew professionally. When Darius saw her perseverance and even offered to help her, Nia began to believe in his renewed commitment. But the naive faith she had placed in him shattered one morning. When she woke up, Darius and all her savings had vanished. The hardest thing for Nia was discovering that he had not only stolen her money, but had also fled the region with his younger sister. Darius had secretly been having an affair with Nia's sister behind her back. His false promises deceived Nia's sister, who betrayed her own sister to accompany him. What Nia discovered devastated her. Darius had not only stolen her future, but had also left her and their child in a state of devastation and abandonment. The money was never found, even after Nia reported the theft. After suffering from deep sadness due to betrayal and the deaths of her sister and partner, Nia found herself facing life as a single mother. Due to the financial burden created by the stolen money, Nia was forced to abandon her plans to go to college and focus on a variety of low-paying jobs to make ends meet. This unfortunate event was causing Nia great distress. The reason behind her belief that a $200 parking fine was a small fortune. Everyone in the courtroom, including the judge, listened closely to Nia's story. The young woman's responses seemed to sincerely move the judge. And that is the power of innocence, the ability to touch heartstrings we often forget we have. But now I ask you, are we all capable of changing perspective so quickly? Write it in the comments. He continued to ask questions in an attempt to learn more about Nia's situation and the challenges they were facing. With each answer, Judge Callisto's perspective seemed to shift. Instead of the strict and unyielding judge he had often heard about, Nia was happy to see a man whose eyes had a hint of compassion and empathy. Finally, he did something that surprised everyone: the moment of truth. Would he dismiss the fine, or would he be inflexible? But beware, what happens next will leave you speechless. Speaking directly to Maya and asking, "Well, Maya, since your mom broke the parking rule, what do you think her punishment should be?" Judge Callisto openly broke tradition. The audience in the courtroom held their breath. In the judge's court, this was unheard of. Nia's eyes widened in shock. Did the judge really believe that a 6-year-old could form an opinion? But Maya seemed indifferent to the sudden question. Instead, she looked at him with a look of pity. She should make the decision, she said, because she was a competent judge. For the first time anyone could remember in that courtroom, everyone actually laughed, this time. Judge Callisto couldn't help but smile. He seemed disarmed by Maya's sincerity and innocence in the often antagonistic courtroom. But then, what would the judge decide? Everyone was anxiously awaiting his response. Judge Callisto appeared lost in contemplation as he leaned back in his chair. But what will Judge Callisto do? Will the compassion of a little girl break the heart of a man known for his inflexibility? Stay with us to discover the answer. Then he abruptly announced a short break by raising his hand, and everyone stood up as the court called for the clerk. As the clerk approached the bench, the judge leaned down and whispered some instructions. A moment later, the clerk nodded and exited through a side door. Voices full of confusion circulated in the courtroom. What was the judge's plan? When he returned, the court officer had a brown paper bag in hand. The judge took it from him, smiled, and passed it to Maya. Have you ever witnessed such an extraordinary moment? If this story has touched you, share it with 3 people who believe in the power of kindness. And don't forget to subscribe. It's free, but it is essential for us to continue sharing stories like this. Here you go, he said. Young lady. He kindly told her that before going to court, they needed to take care of her rumbling stomach. The sandwiches and juice boxes were carefully wrapped in the bag. Maya's eyes widened with joy, and a smile spread across her face. Nia was overwhelmed with emotion. She never would have thought that such civility could take place in a courtroom. Even a small gesture like this meant a lot in the situation they were in now. After the unplanned dinner break, the judge brought the court back into session, but everything felt different. Instead of making his usual hasty decisions, Judge Callisto carefully examined Nia's case. He found that she had an excellent record and an outstanding legal history. In fact, this was Nia's only parking violation in 9 years. Everyone was surprised by the judge's next gesture when he turned to face Nia and announced his decision. After examining the facts and considering her past behavior, he decided to dismiss the fine. The courtroom began to erupt in applause. Today was certainly a day of new beginnings. Nia felt a wave of relief wash over her, as if a weight had been lifted. This was much more than the judge could have ever dreamed of, but it wasn't over yet. As he continued, he pulled out a piece of paper and told Nia that he understood the difficulties of being a single parent. Consequently, a list of nearby opportunities for single mothers was created and put on the page. Training programs and childcare support services were on this list. Both offered a free online degree in most cases. Nia's gratitude filled her eyes. This was no longer related to the dismissed ticket. When Nia began to stammer, it was exactly when she really needed the judge's help. She sincerely didn't know how to thank the judge. But Judge Callisto smiled at her again without warning. No gratitude was necessary, because for him, this was justice with a sprinkle of mercy. Judge Callisto shared the goodwill with the community. The story of the friendly relationship between the judge and Nia, and his surprisingly lenient decision, was shared on social media and by local news outlets. In addition to dismissing the fine, others were surprised by the judge's genuine sympathy for Nia's situation. Nia found the courage to start over thanks to the kindness of the judge and the resources he provided. To ensure that Nia was cared for, she enrolled in the online degree program and utilized childcare assistance. As a result, she felt a little more relaxed and optimistic about a safer future. Judge Callisto's interactions with Nia and Maya changed his perspective as they reignited a long-dormant empathy in him. He finally understood that while the law was untouchable, its function was to protect, not punish. He no longer saw the law as a rigid set of rules, but as a means to protect the most vulnerable citizens of society. What a fascinating and enchanting story. This demonstrates that empathy and compassion can be shown anywhere, even within the confines of a formal courtroom. What experiences do you have with courts and judges? Every comment on this story represents a symbol of hope for people facing hardships every day. And every share of this video is an invitation to look at the world with more empathy. We invite you to join this mission. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with anyone who believes in the power of kindness and humanity. But wait, if you think this story is incredible, the next video will be even more shocking. I'll give you just one hint. Not all courtrooms are like this. And what if there was an even more absurd and moving case? Don't miss the opportunity to find out. Click now and subscribe so you won't miss it.